I wanted to make a video regarding the JK Wrangler, so the 2007 through 2018 model years. Now, in my opinion, this generation just makes me think of like malls, wrongly installed dealer rough country lifts with no control arm, 70K Rubicons, lockers that are never used. However, I also feel that this model is not only a sales monster, but pretty polarizing in the terms of the 4x4 scene. There's a lot more to this generation than just the stupid duck shit and all the memes. So in 2001, the Wrangler needed a redesign. The trusty TJ was showing its age and a design competition was held at Chrysler. In 2004, CAD designs of an early Jeep Gladiator concept was designed by Dan Zimmerman. Then in 2005, when this concept was debuted at the Detroit Auto Show, it was a good sneak peek at a lot of the design elements of the JK Wrangler to come. So finally in 2006, 5 years after its initial design started, the new Wrangler was debuted at the 2006 North American International Auto Show. Jeep pulled a power move and replicated the Robert Lutz Grand Cherokee ZJ debut, which is one of my all-time favorite clips. That was a legendary clip to me. That was a really cool way to introduce a also polarizing vehicle at the time for the SUV market. Chrysler Group's former CEO, Tom Lasorda, drove the new model up a flight of steps and through a window. And then the JK generation was then available for purchase for the first time in August 2006 for the 2007 model year. The Wrangler was now redesigned with a wider track, a longer wheelbase than the TJ for two-door models, but shorter in length, which helped out with the approach and departure angles. The creature comforts introduced were very welcome. For the first time ever in the Wrangler, you were able to get, fobbed power locks, power windows, navigation, and Rubicons with the detachable front sway bar end links. Stability control was becoming prevalent and more software than ever was in these Wranglers. This was definitely a new thing, having a lot of electronics. But in modern day standards, these things were a lot more simple than comparable production models, especially today. There's still pretty DIY friendly models to own. There's not too many modules or crazy stuff going on that is going to limit you a huge amount, especially the pre-Pentastar V6, so 2011 and below. The four-door models were new and they were a sales monster. These things dominated by far. At the end of the generation, most of the sales were all four-door models. This opened up so much potential for larger buyer demographic, and it really does show. Like, everywhere you go, you see these things. You always see a four-door Wrangler JK. Everywhere. Everybody and their mother has one. For example, in 2018, the last year, 26,000 two-doors were made and about 106,000 four-doors were made. So the four-door beat it out by a landslide. It really is the official mall/Target grocery car, and it's not a secret. It's definitely a very basic choice, if you will. The four-door has about 20 inches added to the two-door platform, providing much more breathing room and a more practical everyday use, so it's not limited to just a tiny, not practical two-door anymore. You can actually use this for all your duties. Of course, with the wheelbase change, so did the driving experience, as it was longer than a, of course, sub 100-inch wheelbase Wrangler. So that was a nice change. There were several trim models to choose from. Until 2009, the Sport was known as the X, and after the X, it was renamed the Sport and Sport S. So you could get a Sport or X until 2009, which was a bare bones model. The XS or Sport S after 2009 was a step up with AC standard, among some other things. The Sahara was the luxury trim, most noticeably having body colored tops and fenders. And of course, the mighty Rubicon being offered was the off-road ready trim. The body colored cosmetics for the Sahara was a nice touch, I'd say. It gave it more of a put together and premium look than your standard black fenders and tops. Especially on a four-door, I really think it gives it a more uniform look. The base was a builder's dream pretty much. A wonderful, affordable, modern, ideal platform to make into your own modern wheeler. The Sport S seemed to be the most common trim, being a middle ground trim level. It seems like a lot of people went with that model and they're everywhere. The Rubicon was a perfect out-of-the-box, do-nothing, drive to the trails Friday, go to work Monday sort of trim. So with the Rubicon, of course, you got the Dana 44 instead of the 30. You had higher spline to axle shafts with this model, electronic locking diffs, sway bar disconnects, 4-to-1 transfer case. It was like creme de la creme. This thing is set up. Very minimal things were needed to do some pretty tough stuff. And if your style matches this, I'd say buy this. I don't think you'll ever need more. If you're going to do mild wheeling and you never plan on doing any crazy stuff, the Rubicon is the perfect choice. You need to do very little to accomplish your goals. Now, if you want to go crazy, do like a setup on tons, then the base makes a lot more sense, or Sport S, or if you're just daily driving, same scenario. However, overspending on the Rubicon seems to be a huge trend for many daily driver buyers, especially in the later years. Like, you see some Rubicons that probably don't even know what an axle lock is, or even know they have it, or it will never be turned on. This is strange to me. I've always wondered what the draw is when they're being sold. Like, I don't know if it's just the interior to them, or just the, I don't know, thing of it being the highest trim, like the best you can get. Speaking of the interior, the pre-2011s are like the ugliest thing I've ever seen. The steering wheel looks like it's from SpongeBob's Boatmobile, and the plastics are like PS3 controllers. It's really bad. I really don't know if I could fold for this interior. I dislike it a ton. The 2011 redesign was a night and day difference and made for a pretty iconic and long lasting and running interior setup. It was comfortable, it was welcoming, it was okay to spend time in. It was a much more modern design. It didn't feel like a build quality of a pair of cheap sunglasses from the mall. Unfortunately, the super comfy seats were eventually ditched. I guess that's opinionated, but the new design happened in 2013 when they switched the seats. I love the older seats. They seemed a little more classic looking and a little less cheap, and I really like the bolster on the older seats. Alright, so we're going to cover the ultra hated 3.8 V6. It was borrowed from many models, and it's a very old, ancient design pushrod V6. This caused a huge stir as the 4-liter has its well-known legendary history. Like it should. It's a great engine. It was iconic. It had been in service for so long. It was understood well by buyers. Many swore by its reliability, having an almost cult-like following. All the info was out there for it. Everything had been done, and so I understand why the 3.8 was so hated upon announcement. It was for sure like a second iteration of a legendary movie sort of deal. Like, there was a huge amount of pressure to fulfill the 4-liter shoes, as there should have been, as it was a pretty important choice. In my opinion, I'm kind of in between. The 3.8 is obviously an absolute dog and was still a design as old as time itself. Also, sharing the engine with the Caravan knocked it down a few pegs. It was most definitely not a help and a common joke, added to the soreness of like losing the beloved 4-liter. I've started to appreciate the 3.8 a little more year by year. I'm almost making it legendary in my own head just because it's basic. Just everything you would want to do, you can do at home still. It's really straightforward. May I even say like a good engine to learn on. Parts are cheap, super ancient, and the same process for so many engines. A child could do the timing chain in a day. I'd sum it up as just like honest work. The 3.8 isn't great, it's not bad, it's just an engine, it's fine. I don't think it deserves the hate, and it is a reliable, safe choice, especially if taken well care of. They can hit very high mileage. You see them with, some male Jeeps with 350,000 miles on them. That being said, with any engine, and being a Chrysler product especially, you're going to get the cases with poor build quality and unacceptable engine failures. As these age, though, that seems to be a little bit weeded out. It isn't uncommon to see 3.8s in that high mileage range nowadays. Yeah, I'd say 2011's the year if you really like the old engines, because you can get the new interior but the old drivetrain. And these 3.8s are also becoming a much more affordable option as they're getting pretty old now. I mean, the 2007s are they're coming up on 20 years. But that also brings neglect and rust issues, so that's a whole nother can of worms. But fixer-up examples, specifically like mail carrier Jeeps, dip really low, like into $4,000. I guess the only other noteworthy point of the 3.8, it likes to drink a little oil, depending on your engine. I personally, with my experiences, haven't had issues, but there's other people that burn oil like it's a VQ, so it's really kind of what you get is what you get with that. So in 2012, there was a engine switch, so the Pentastar V6 was now a thing, but this has been desired by many people for a while at this point, some even the start of the model. So you got about 85 horsepower and 75 more pound-feet of torque. This was substantial, and it was noticeable. The The 3.6 was an all-aluminum design with a 24-valve dual overhead cam and variable valve timing. The early years were troublesome for the Pentastar. I would steer clear of, the 2012, 2013 years. The head issues, I think, on the passenger side, if I remember correctly, were pretty gnarly. I'm assuming if they've made it this far, maybe that's been remedied or taken care of, but you still never know. Along with that, there's some cam issues known as the Pentastar tick, but I would say for the majority of JK buyers nowadays, the Pentastar is going to be what you're going to buy and what you're going to want. It seems to be the most popular choice for quite obvious reasons. And as the years went on, the 3.6 became better and better. A later model is your best bet. It just got more refined. Common issues were worked out. Oil coolers were always a thing, but same as a 3.8, it's an engine. So of course you see odd failures and catastrophes. However, same as a 3.8, there's also many Pentastars running around with crazy high mileage with no issues. The transmissions in the JK were nothing special or anything to write home about, really. Here in the States, you most commonly see the 3.8 with the 42 RLE auto 4-speed, and we all know how great those are. The 3.6, you'll find the W5A580 5-speed. That was an improvement for sure from the 4-speed, and the manual transmission remained the same, being the Mercedes-built NSG 370 6-speed. So the autos all kind of have your typical Chrysler transmission issues you would expect if you happen to get unlucky and you get a bad one. As far as the NSG goes, it's also just fine. It's a truck transmission and it drives like it, that's for sure. Many complain of the noise, poor shifting, gear pop-outs, and legit constant throw-out bearing failure, which has caused many to convert to center force style internal slave to combat and fix that constant failure. It's definitely not a sporty transmission. You can't shift it like one. You need to readjust your driving style for slow, gentle shifts that quote-unquote fall into place. You'll know what I mean if you drive one. They're kind of weird. I wanted to cover some odd, rare additions along with some random postal usage facts. The Wrangler JK actually targeted the rural mail carrier sales with right-hand drive models being made available from the jump. So in 2007 to 2008, you could only get the mail Jeep in a 2-door, and then oddly in 2009, they switch over to the 4-door. 2011, Mopar offered a kit to convert your 4-door Unlimited into a pickup. This was pretty cool. This converts your 4-door into a 2-door and still uses your existing hardtop with the Freedom panels. Everything still works. Steel 50-inch bed is then added. Of course, I have to cover the MW3 edition. This was such a weird one, like when I didn't know about these, but looking into them, it's weird. It was loaded with AEV accessories, winch stuff, locking axles, a plethora of MW3 logos, cosmetic changes, interior changes. A lesser known fact, an option, is that the JKs in the Middle East had beef fan setups. They had a conventional clutch fan, which you don't see here, and electric fans for the harsh climate, and you can still find these shrouds and replicate this. I highly recommend it. It's a worthwhile mod. It helps out with the electric fans, kind of thermal cycling the engine. You get a cooler, more consistent temp. To sum up the JK at the end of this all, I think it's the last real true Wrangler. They're weird in between. They're modern, but not too modern. Probably a little more electronics than preferred, but they seem like a solid, developed, and well-loved generation among their owners. You can't really beat this model out of the box for the money if you plan to really use it for wheeling. It's an incredible, modern, capable, and the internet is at your disposal for any info, repair guides, forum posts, and modifications. It genuinely is like a Honda Civic of 4x4s, and parts are everywhere secondhand on Marketplace. A lot of people have these, and a lot of people are constantly changing them and selling parts and whatnot. Not to mention they're starting to get really affordable. That being said, I can't wait to see them age even further, being out of production now, and how time treats them. I think rust is going to be a big problem. If you actually made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for sitting here and listening to me nerd out about useless JK Wrangler facts for far too long. If you have anything to add, any fun facts, or if I got something wrong, of course, feel free to comment, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great night.